All right, and this is from the Blackbird Variations. I hope you guys had a good weekend. This is not poetry, but it is about poetry. From chapter 8 of the Blackbird Variations. It is natural for people to form a judgment of a man should they hear that he is a poet. There is an index of unfortunate traits associated with those whose worldly work is manifested through verse. There is a certain sensitivity, a certain arrogance, and a certain posturing which defies the forthright march of society and its undergirding of communication. A poet, looking long at words and their attendant phrases, will desire to move beyond their mere utility. How words are used to denote processes, needs, and states by way of requests, demands, promises, descriptions, questions, and so on. And after some time, the poet will come to see that language is an edifice that humans have lain over the world in order to effect their will upon it. Recognizing this is the first step toward a mastery of language, and this transition from language's common use to its mastery is affected by a phase of crisis, where the poet will be overcome with language's arbitrariness on the one hand, and a sense of life's profound indifference toward meaning on the other. In order for a poet to pass through this gap of arbitrariness and indifference, he requires a clear and direct access to both life as it is lived and language as it is used in order to establish within both necessary forms suitable to his age. And perhaps by this one will see the root of his sensitivity, and the cause of his arrogance, and the purpose of his posturing, his affectation, his doing things with language, which is all gesture to begin with, that not his time had fixed to go about fixing its needs in the present. The poet postures, as all of you posture all of the time, but his postures seem put on so far as you forgot what you have put on, for it has been put on you to put things in such and such a way, which he refuses to so put. Early on, not in life, but in his initiation to poetic mastery, the poet discovers love not only in his beloved, but also in his meditations on her. He is inflamed by expression, and after some seasons or successions of lovers, he might find that all there is to say about love has already found its classic and inelastic form within his inherited language. Fire and desire, for instance, have lost all their heat by being linked and linked and linked, and so he must either go up or go down from his experience of love. From the field of dewy lovemaking, he will retreat to the monastery or to the brothel. For whatever happened in that field, whatever transfigurative event that broke down the barriers of his individuality and turned him into a conduit for the boundless energies of life, he will find that language, as it is used, does not contain that transfigurative power. That transfiguration does not have to do with understanding nor with making sense, which language has been created to effect. And what life effects on lovers is something other than what makes sense. At its lowest human limit, love is a knowing, a shifting of the object of love into a love of objectness, of formness, of embodiment. Love breaks through not only your habitual objectification of one another by means of your lower desires, but as well your instinctual personification of one another by means of your subtler capacities. Love breaks through both those without denying them whatsoever, for how else do objects propagate? How else do people make more people but through a using of one another for their own pleasure, by a delight in the essential pleasures of embodiment and personhood that define you in relation to one another and in relation to your world? And language Beyond being a pleasure to speak and to hear, it certainly can speak about love, but can it ever be love? It can use love to affect states of reverence toward the transcendent or states of lewd levity toward the silliness of your status as bodily beings. And yet the poet, who wishes language to be the field, the unclothing, the skin that meets skin, the faces that lose their edges by giving them over to one another, for language to do anything other than to express love, it must become love. And the moment it is made to be love, it is seen by the beloved reader not as love, but as if it were love. Language still merely refers, and thus proves itself as a derivative, diminutive tool of creativity, shadowing the demiurgical urgency of pure creation. Language ever becomes a way of speaking about a thing. And how does a man who feels language to be capable of being that which he uses it to describe, how does he convince his readers to cast off the referentiality that they bring to it by no fault of their own, and to allow the verses, words, and phrases to be love? The energy to create such a verse, such a versification, to show others a showing that is itself what is being showed, this requires either possession or an utter dispossession, and both of those will break a man within his own embodiment. The energy that must be expended into language to break it from its usefulness, like love, cannot deny its use, but subsume that use into a higher purpose, and that requires some measure of arrogance, does it not? It requires a persistent dissatisfaction with the commotion of common sense. And here, too, there are two paths for the poet to take, toward the monad or toward the multitude. Either whittling language down to a mere handful of words, separated from all else by means of a mostly blank page, or else he forms containers within containers within containers, an epic edifice to house the infinite translatability that is at the heart of creativity, that alchemical manipulation of the very roots of substance. That is the power he seeks to display within language, a transcendence of forms affected through forms. And neither the minimal nor the maximal methods are more useful or more powerful than the other. Neither the lyric nor the epic are more or less excusable, for both have at their heart a profound hubris, this pretending to the throne that has spurred and dogged and dismembered the poet time and time again, as he seeks to pass beyond initiation and beyond imitation. And that pretension, which casts him out of his time and place, that eccentricity of his off-kilter gait, that insufferableness in his always making everything about him, about his work, about his own quivering organ of sensation, the character flaw that is his undoing, which gives the truth to the aphorism that no one loves a living poet, but everyone loves a dead one. It comes down to his belief that language not only affects man's will and desires and schemes into the world, but that language might make a reality that is much finer, brighter, quicker, more subtle, more effective, more believable than that terribly bountiful, beautiful life that has been given to you. And who is to say that the poet shouldn't be damned to an eternity of repetitive, liver-rending retribution for daring not only to believe this, but to seek to prove it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Good night.